Hello, welcome to our webinar today. Really good to have you with us. I'm Christine and I'm the Head of Retention and Partnerships here at Flexa. Our CEO Molly was due to be chairing this panel today, but in an ironic or perhaps very apt twist of fate, she is having a day of extreme pain with her endometriosis. So that is the reality of women's health. So I'm delighted to be joining you in her place. Women's health at work has come a really long way. We've got more organisations who are introducing menopause policies, expanding wellbeing support, having conversations that maybe even 4 or 5 years ago would have felt completely off limits, and that progress really matters. But the reality is that many workplaces are still tiptoeing around this topic today. UK women miss an average of 9 days' work a year due to health issues, and 60% say that their concerns haven't been taken seriously at work. We know that menopause symptoms are sometimes pushing experienced and talented women out of roles. Period pain is suffered in silence. Fertility journeys are often navigated alone. So the cost to individuals and businesses is very real. And the question isn't whether organisations should act. We are past that. The question is how. How do we move from policy into practice, from conversations to actual genuine culture change, and from reactive support to something that is very proactive? So that is what we're digging into today. I am delighted to be joined by 3 brilliant people to explore this topic. Can I ask you each to introduce yourselves? So your name, your role, and the company that you are representing. Hannah, should we start with you?
Hello, lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. So my name's Hannah Briscoe. I work for an organisation called OVO. OVO is a UK-based energy retailer. So essentially we provide electricity and gas to people's homes. We've got about 3.5 million customers. So we're quite a big player in the industry, and we've got about 4,000 people that work for us. The role that I do is within our people team. So I'm head of, it's a bit of a mouthful, so forgive me, it's head of people, strategy, talent and engagement. And that role encompasses working hand in hand with our CPO on our people strategy, as well as talent acquisition, hiring, people leadership development and engagement. So essentially making sure that the experience of our people is the best it possibly can be. And that encompasses our belonging and inclusion diversity initiatives.
Amazing, thank you. And Lisa.
Hi, so my name is Lisa Sage. I work for BAE Systems. So we provide some of the world's most kind of advanced technology-led defence, aerospace and security solutions. And my role within the company is I'm an employer brand and recruitment marketing manager, but I'm also the co-chair for one of our internal support groups, which is the reproductive health and fertility group. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you. And Leanne.
Hi there, thank you very much for having me. I'm Leanne, Director of People, Talent and Internal Ops at Patchwork. We are a healthcare technology company that helps transform healthcare staffing work, so supporting smarter workforce management and generally helping improve access to care across the system. We are a flexible remote first organisation, and we have around 120 members of our team. A large part of my role at Patchwork is making sure that our people policies, practices and ways of working are real and actually work for the humans that we have the pleasure of working with every day. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this discussion with you. So to start off with, thinking about why do you think women's health is still a taboo topic in lots of workplaces? And is there anything that you'd like to share about why this topic is important to you? I'll come to Lisa on that one.
Yeah, so I mean, I was having to think about this, and I think it kind of really stems from school personally. So I think when I was there, like a lot of kind of the conversations you had around your cycles and sex education, it was like, this is your cycle, that's it, that was done and dusted, and it wasn't really spoken about in any more detail. And I think that's just kind of filtered up through to the workplace as well, because that was just very much the norm when you were younger, and as you grow up, that's kind of what it is. And I think for me, it's one of those things where, so I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was 28, so very much well within the workforce. but I had a lot of those symptoms when I was still at school. So, you know, if I'd known a little bit more, there was a little bit more education back then it could have been managed sort of a lot sooner in life. Whereas having to kind of, I guess, go through all of that diagnosis test when I was then in the working space, and trying to work out how to then have those conversations with people at work around kind of why I was going for testing, what was kind of happening in that space, kind of then the wider conversation around kind of fertility and everything like that. So I think, you know, having those conversations earlier, I think helps to kind of bring it into the workspace as well. But it does still seem to be very much kind of a topic that people kind of maybe want to shy away from a little bit. And even outside of work, I'll speak to kind of some of my girlfriends, and sometimes we're like, oh, too much information, and I'm like, but actually it's probably not too much information, and we should be having these conversations. And like, one of my closest friends also has PCOS. I'm like, actually that's not too much information, we should be sharing that experience with each other. And it's the same kind of internally at work as well. So yeah, with the group that I'm in, kind of from the reproductive health piece, it's a really nice and healthy space to kind of have those conversations, and try and kind of encourage people to have them outside of that kind of safe community as well, really.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you.
I think that really resonates with me, the too much information. Actually, I had a call with one of our people partners prior to this webinar, and we were talking about our own unique experiences with periods, and she was open with me in terms of her journey into menopause, and the fact that we both said, oh, too much information here, and then checked ourselves. So I was like, I'm literally about to attend a webinar where we're talking about this, so this is definitely not too much information. I think for me, like my own personal reason for believing this is super important to be talking about stems from having two young children. So I've got a boy and a girl, and they're young, so 6 and nearly 9, but they're really curious. And when I have my monthly cycle, they often interrupt me in the bathroom, whether I'm on monthly cycle or not. And they're just really curious about it, and they want to know more. And I think that's really great, because I remember being a child not feeling like I could ask my mum things like that, or her not necessarily being open about that. So that's, from a personal level, really important that my children grow up knowing that it is something that should be spoken about in the workplace as well as outside of the workplace, and that people have unique experiences. We are all unique human beings, and everyone will have different challenges or not, actually. And in fact, the call we had earlier, we were saying, you know, a lot of my friends say, oh, it just doesn't really bother me. Like it comes, it goes, and doesn't affect the way that I show up at work or the way that I show up at home. And it is just a unique experience for everyone. And I think the reason why it's still a taboo, I think, which is a shame, I think we are definitely getting better. I mean, the fact we're talking about it on a webinar is super positive. And, you know, OVO, we've done lots of great things to ensure that we are progressive in that space. But I think it's still perceived as a weakness, or women not necessarily being committed to work if they're then being open about the fact that there's health issues that are meaning that they can't show up to work in quite the same way. So yeah, it's just great that we're talking about it.
Thank you. Anything you want to add to that, Leanne?
Yeah, I was actually going to say I am in an extremely privileged position where I am today. It's been just over 3 and a bit years at Patchwork Health, founded by clinicians who 100% understand, even if they're male and haven't got that lived experience, but really do understand the impact of women's health, men's health, but just all health. So I'm really lucky because my women's health issues have been mostly developed and diagnosed in the last 4 years that I've been at Patchwork. Prior to that, I did work in flexible environments that obviously afforded me the ability to just stay at home if I obviously wanted to. So I do come from that experience of not having had to handle the difficult conversations at work, or having had to struggle in if I didn't feel like I could go in. I have endometriosis, and I'm under investigations at the moment for just even possibly more things that are going on. And, you know, so I can really relate to these things. But for me, it's when I've spoken to friends or been on other webinars, joined other forums, taken part in other networks where other women are expected to push through the pain, push through hormonal challenges and their fertility journeys, and struggle through things like menopause silently because they're scared to talk about it at work or scared to ask about the time off. And I have to put aside my genuinely great experience of the workplace to realise how much of a struggle it is for other people and other people in work environments, and obviously make sure that Patchwork remains and always stays with a very, very high bar. But as I say, I joined openly sharing that I had endometriosis, and I was fully supported from day one. But that doesn't mean we can't push for that change, and that's why we're here today.
Yeah, I think there's something so interesting thematically there, isn't it, about that candor and that openness. So I was diagnosed with early menopause in my mid-30s, and for the first couple of years was something that I kept very personal and private, which is obviously completely anyone's decision, but then felt like I lived through a real moment of companies starting to bring in menopause policies, Davina McCall, like suddenly a change just within 5-10 years of actually how people were speaking about menopause and women's health issues. And I think there is something so incredibly powerful for just that candor and that openness of sharing your own story, and actually the impact that that has and the empowerment that can have across teams to unlock other people feeling safe about that. So thank you all for sharing your personal stories. I think it is incredibly powerful, just coming up as a embodied human saying this is the lived reality of my life.
I really agree with what Lisa said, and understand where she's coming from. That even with friends, you say this is probably too much information, and I think if you're saying that with friends, you are going to be even more reticent saying it at work. And the work environments are created as very traditional norms that are far slower to keep up with the pace of change than more domestic environments. So if we're saying this is TMI in our friend group or with family, that's going to be there even more for work, and we owe it to employees to break down that barrier and actually say it's okay. What you want to share is okay. We're here to hear that.
100%. 100%. Well, we've seen a huge range of women's health benefits being adopted by companies on Flexa who are looking to provide that support, and those benefits have got more and more granular as the years have gone on. Are there any particular benefits that you have implemented or have seen implemented at your companies, and why? Leanne, should we start with you on that one?
I was muted just in between that. As I say, when I joined Patchwork, they already had a wealth of support, either in the form of benefits or specific things. We do take the approach of not having necessarily a full list suite of written policies. Lots of companies approach this differently. For us, health is, really flexible, means different things to different people, and people have different needs. But the things that we have done is, for example, building. We have obviously enhanced sick pay. We obviously do what we can to support all individuals that have any type of sickness, but there has to be, as you know, from an HR perspective, there has to be a limit on things contractually. And what we've done, for example, is build out the fields that people can select when they're off, if they are obviously saying that they're off due to or need to be off due to menopause, menstrual cycle, or related women's health issues like adenomyosis and endometriosis. Those days are automatically excluded from this total. So whilst that is, in my opinion, from an HR perspective, a really important benefit, we do frame it as a benefit, but we also frame it as just part of working life at Patchwork, because as a woman, those things happen on a monthly basis, whether you do or don't have associated pain or conditions that go with it. I would say that is absolutely stand out and must stand out for me. When I joined, we haven't changed that. It remains and it will remain.
What great practical benefit. Thank you. Hannah, anything you want to add from OVO?
Yeah, I think for me, the powerful belonging networks, so our support groups that we set up some time ago now. I won't go into all of those groups that we have, but I think that they are super powerful because they are the opportunity to have that kind of psychologically safe environment for individuals to join. So we have an Engender network, but we've since sort of starting have wider Engender belonging communities. So we've got a group for parenting, we've got a group for pregnancy, baby and child loss. We've also got a menopause group. and an agenda PMDD group. So quite specific groups which people can join and have that kind of shared and lived experience and actually learn from others. So those are the kind of the key call outs. We are a previously accredited menopause friendly employer. We have got over 30 trained menopause champions, so people that can speak to our employees about the menopause and are super knowledgeable on it, which I think is great. From a period point of view, we are a period positive workplace, bit of a mouthful, and to be that to be ranked as that, we offer period products in all of our bathrooms and leggings in case people need a change in all our bathrooms as well. And I think, Leanne, you mentioned kind of enhanced leave. We are sorry, there was a bit of beeping. I'm not sure what's happening there, but maybe that was questions coming in. It momentarily distracted me. But we also have enhanced leave for pregnancy loss, fertility treatment, and premature baby support. So we have done quite a lot, certainly in the last few years, to ensure that we are as progressive as possible, and we are as supportive as possible to people that are going through different things in their lives. Those are probably the main call outs that I would share.
That's a fantastic range. Thank you. Lisa, anything you want to add?
Yeah, they're very similar to sort of both Hannah and Leanne. So yeah, I'm quite lucky where I am with BAE Systems. They're always sort of listening and asking for kind of what else they can do, kind of how else they can kind of benefit their kind of colleagues and their employees as well. But yeah, very similar. We have kind of a special leave policy, which covers kind of a multitude of things. And there is sort of a call out to IVF under that piece as well, which for me was amazing when I came in, because I had IVF for my first child, and I knew at a previous company, I knew if I wanted a second child, I would have to have IVF again. So when I joined BAE and I saw that, I was like, oh, weight lifted, like that's great. Like I know I'm kind of supported in that. So we do have kind of various things that are covered by that. We're also a menopause friendly employer, as yourself, Hannah, which is fantastic. And we do have our kind of employee connection groups internally as well, which are all kind of run by employees who have volunteered that kind of the topic that they look at and they cover is really important to them, including a women's health one, which covers, we have a peer support group for both menopause and also the reproductive health one, working parents group as well. And they're fantastic because, as you said, it's, you know, people who are either going through it or have been through it, talking about it, being really open. They're really safe environments. They're able to share those experiences, but we also have a load of people that join who want to be advocates in that space as well. So with the group that I'm part of, the reproductive health one, we do have a lot of kind of men join as well that are very much like, we just want to learn more about how we can support, how we can kind of help kind of other, you know, women that we know in our life who are going through reproductive health issues, you know, who I've got a sister who's going through fertility treatment, or, you know, somebody in my team is going through that. They really want to kind of be advocates as well, which is fantastic. So yeah, it's a really kind of positive space to be in.
Yeah, I would agree on having advocates. I think that's super powerful. We've just introduced a reverse mentoring scheme with our senior leadership team, and we've actually paired our CEO up with our menopause champion, because he was quite open with me and said, do you know, I just don't know enough. I think perhaps his wife might be going through that stage of life. Perhaps I shouldn't say that on this forum, but I think everyone knows someone that's impacted by whether it's menopausal period or fertility, whatever it might be. And I think something like reverse mentoring is a really powerful way of males usually that feel slightly awkward about it and actually just want to learn from someone and their experience.
We have the same. We're very small by comparison to some other businesses at just roughly 100 plus people. We've implemented in the last few years various different steering groups. We have special interest group channels on Slack. But what we're seeing is also a real mix of people joining them to say, I don't necessarily have any. You used to frame it as, do you want to represent your community or do you want to represent an issue? But we are now learning that people are joining them to learn from those people as well, which is really incredible. As I said, we're quite small, so for us to have enhanced paternity, compassionate leave, nursery scheme, our compassionate leave obviously includes loss, IVF, things like that. Now I think we're genuinely incredibly lucky given how small we are, to be able to have those things. But it also means that we're so small that I know every person and I can see the positive impact that those policies, initiatives and benefits actually have on the people. I think that's what drives me more to do it even more, is that, and to try and see how we can improve even more by seeing the impact on each and every kind of family or every woman that we have at work.
I think the mentoring piece is interesting, and we do with a few of our groups, we have sort of like buddies as well. So the working parents group have like parental buddies, so you can kind of apply and get paired with someone who's in a similar stage of life to kind of have somebody in there with you with the reproductive health. And we have the same things. If you want to talk to somebody specifically about an area, you can be kind of matched up with that person. And I've had some really incredible conversations with people who have kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about it. And again, it's been a mix of people who are going through it, but also people who just want to learn more about it as well. And having those one-on-one conversations, it's so powerful. And you get sort of such a sense of community just from one-on-one, because you know that conversation is probably going to go wider. You know that's going to have that kind of domino effect. And yeah, it's really kind of powerful. And it's what I love about being part of the group as well. It's like, if I can help just one person feel a little bit less lonely or a little bit more supported while they're doing it, then it will all be worth it to me. So yeah, it's really good to kind of have that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something about the groups, isn't it? Then I sometimes get worried that we don't have enough people attending each month. But actually, to your point, Lisa, if we can just help one person, just have that honest, open conversation where someone learns something or someone takes something away that they can then share with someone else, that's enough for it to be worthwhile.
There's such a range there, I think, isn't there, of really creative ways of companies supporting, from the accreditations, the groups, the buddies, the reverse mentoring. There are so many possibilities there for companies thinking through what this might look like. I think we've got a question from the audience around, did you know that some of those benefits were on offer to you before you joined? And do you highlight those benefits in your own job descriptions and job ads?
I'll go if you like. I mean, I've been at OVO for nearly 12 years, so no. In terms of those benefits were definitely not on offer 12 years ago. I'm really proud to have been part of a team that have ensured that we're in the place we are now and offering those super progressive policies. And yes, we definitely advertise them on our job posts. We're super proud to be able to share them. And obviously using a platform like Flexa shows people looking for a role that we are a flexible employer and that we do offer these great policies and processes and actual progressive in nature.
Yeah, I mean, I just openly shared I had endometriosis, and they just said, we're here for you. We're here. That's not a problem at all. This is how we support you. And however, they asked me how I needed support. I didn't typically apply for my job. Someone reached out to me. So it's not the same thing as seeing it and advertised. So I didn't know it was there in that regard. However, obviously share Hannah's opinion there that we are on Flexa. Any other platforms we use, we highlight women's health support, and we also obviously highlight things like enhanced maternity. It's hard to enumerate every single thing you do to help and support women's health. For example, you can't list out everything that the compassionate leave policy would include, but it's about obviously trying to convey through your EVP that you are an approachable employer, an inclusive employer, and a place where things and subjects like this are not taboo. I learned that from my very first interview, where I shared my needs and I was fully supported. I hope that people feel that way when they interview with us. But other than that, just putting it out, what you do have in your benefits list or in any cultural videos or any cultural content is obviously how we try to get that across. But obviously no one really knows that it's real, and it's how it's really supported until they're with us and they obviously join in and they feel that support.
Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I'll say I joined sort of BAE about 4.5 years ago, just as the employer brand team was sort of becoming a thing, really. So we've done quite a lot of work to kind of try and make it more explicit on kind of what it is that we do offer, but also bringing it to life, because yes, you can see kind of, as you say, the benefits through sort of job listings and on the website, things like the specific parts of like our special leave policy as an example. You say it's quite difficult to kind of note all of that down and include that in everything. So it's kind of bringing those to life through kind of different people's stories as well, because I think as well there's, you know, a lot we can do from a marketer. Like I can say, yeah, we're this, but it doesn't feel as real unless it's somebody actually telling that story and that's gone through it and is kind of living it and breathing it as well.
And I think it's knowledge is power, right? So we have to ensure that the recruiters that are having that first interaction with potential employees, and also the people that are doing the interviews, feel like they can represent our organisations in the right light. And if someone does have a question on something more specific, for example, women's health, that all of the people that are interviewing can feel semi-confident to answer and represent our company and say, actually, yes, we do this, this, and this, and this is my personal experience, or actually someone that in my team's had this experience. It's that knowledge and the confidence.
Brilliant, thank you. So thinking about the ways, like from the interview all the way through to embodied culture, and how to build that culture where women do feel safe in talking about those health issues without that fear of judgment. Have you got any tips or advice for how people who might be feeling uncertain about how to start these conversations in the workplace, how to kind of approach that? Any tips or ideas from what has happened in your companies over the last few years?
I think for us, again, it's a slightly smaller environment. When we're on a town hall, when we're speaking together at our company events, there's fewer of us. But hearing leaders speak openly about their health needs, normalizing those conversations, having women represented in leadership positions where, like we've started today with a change in host for women's health reasons, and being open. I don't hesitate to say, I was going to come in the office, but I can't this week because, my endometriosis is flaring up. And I say that so that if I'm around, for example, a relatively new starter, and they see me in my position saying it, they won't then hesitate to advocate for themselves. I hope they wouldn't hesitate to advocate for themselves. Because we've created that kind of culture doesn't mean that the day one that someone joins, especially if they have had a bad experience elsewhere or fewer experiences elsewhere, they don't automatically know that we are striving to create a safe space. So I think just literally using I'm sure there are other reasons, but my top is that using people and talent teams' voice from the interview process through to everyday senior leaders and female representation and leadership. I've not seen a female leader at my company today hesitate to be honest and clear. I'm so proud that they've been able to do that. And I genuinely think they are showing the more junior or less experienced team members that it's okay to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think being authentic, being open, honest in the right moments is the most powerful thing. And I think if I think about our people leaders, so the people that manage our teams, it sounds really obvious, but ensuring that those individuals build personal relationships with their team so they can spot signs, they know their people inside out, as much as that person wants to be known, of course. There's such a powerful connection. With such a big organization, we can't possibly talk all the time about women's health. That would be unrealistic, but our people leaders are having conversations with their people all day, every day. So spotting those signs is key. And I think just showing vulnerability as a leader, from senior leadership right the way down. If people see that vulnerability, then they'll really buy into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, completely agree. It's very kind of, I guess, from the top down, and it then kind of filters down, and it kind of normalizes that behavior. I was actually going to chat with kind of our co-chair the other day about kind of what advice we would kind of give to somebody who was potentially having trouble kind of having conversations with somebody or not kind of knowing how to approach it. And we were kind of having a bit of a brainstorm. We were like, it could be kind of, taking that step back to kind of figure out what is it that's stopping you from having that conversation, what is it that isn't making you feel safe about that, and kind of what those barriers are and what you can do to combat that. So is it a case of maybe it's somebody you don't feel completely comfortable having a conversation with. So is there somebody else in your team or that you work with that you are comfortable with that can come and support you in that? Is it just kind of how you communicate? So me personally, sometimes a lot of time, if it's something emotional, I find it really difficult to voice that, and I find it better to write it down. So is that a better way to communicate that? So kind of figuring out what it is that's stopping you from feeling safe to have that conversation, and is there anything you can do yourself to kind of help with that as well? But no, I definitely agree with kind of Hannah and Leanne in terms of that kind of top-down approach and kind of really normalizing that.
I agree. When we have conversations with people, we ask the same thing of like, what is the barrier here? It's often, I've never spoken about it at work. I don't talk about it even in my personal life. I didn't think it was appropriate to talk about work. I didn't know I could. I didn't know there was support here. We do what we can in our adverts. We've got our internal wiki on Notion with all of our wellbeing hub and our benefits hub, and talk about things, but sometimes people just don't realize that it's there, or they bring the experience they had from the last workplace. Some people often say, I was told not to mention my women's health at work. It made someone feel uncomfortable. And I mean, that's the worst thing I could imagine. A woman's been said at work, been told at work. And we just strive to try and break down, the people team strive to break down that barrier when somebody comes to us, sometimes being that intermediary between the line leaders, sometimes giving them that written space. We do everything we can to make our drop-down fields for any kind of leave inclusive, so people can pick it there, which helps them not have to say it, but their line leader can see it, for example. So really similar things to what Lisa was saying.
Thank you. Some really interesting ideas there for starting those conversations and normalizing that being part of a work dialogue and a manager-managee relationship. In terms of thinking about how to, any tips or advice that you would want to share with the audience today on not just sparking that conversation, but coping with the challenges that come on a very, physical as well as emotional and mental level in terms of women's health. Anything you've seen work well there, or any advice you'd want to share?
I mean, I'll be very kind of transparent and say it's something I still struggle with every day, a lot of the time, trying to like manage it. I mean, I had PCOS and then I had 2 kids, so my body doesn't know whether it's coming or going half the time, and it's changed so much, and like how my PCOS kind of made my body act pre-kids is now very different post-kids. So I'm still kind of, I guess, learning myself what my body is telling me, and I think it is like a constant cycle of figuring that out. And for me, I think it's just trying to educate myself around kind of what it is that my body is needing, whether that's, leaning on the groups that we have internally and kind of talking around the things, like getting advice from sort of other people that are in the same situation, have had PCOS, or I do have PCOS as well, what kind of works for them, and just trying to kind of understand my body a little bit more. And again, having that kind of open dialogue with my line manager as well at times to be like, oh, I'm struggling a little bit today. This is kind of what's happening with this. I said, I'm very sort of lucky like you, Leanne. I kind of work from home all the time. So it's quite nice to kind of have that flexibility so that, I don't always have to kind of be in or have to make an excuse of some sort. It can be kind of a little bit, I guess, hidden in a sense. But yeah, it's just trying to figure kind of what works for you out and what your triggers are, and being kind of honest with yourself and your line manager on that sense as well. And so I'm still educating myself. I'm still learning. I'm still going through that as well. So, and yeah, I'm always learning from kind of other people. We had a lady join us for a session last month that was talking through like hormonal health, and I was sort of sat there like, I mean, I've been sort of looking into this for the last sort of 8 however many years now, and I've learned so much just from that session. I was like, okay, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. So yeah, it's kind of like finding those sort of resources, and yeah, knowledge is power for me as well. It's like I find if I know, I feel more in control when I know more, and that makes me feel kind of more confident in it as well.
I could not agree more. Like on knowledge is power, and that self-awareness. Like I didn't really understand my cycle. I didn't understand my symptoms. I didn't even know what endometriosis was until somebody suggested that might be what was wrong. and I found that through at work, knowing what to expect, knowing my symptoms, how to manage them, what my energy pattern is, for example, and what, I'm on a waiting list for laparoscopy, like what that treatment looks like, what that would look like in terms of impact to work. And I have found that self-awareness has helped me prepare for discussions in the workplace so much more. And to Lisa's point, I still learn every day, whether it's a TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn article, or just anything suggesting things to help manage pain or manage symptoms or manage your cycle or any other women's health matters that you're going through is really important.
Thank you.
I don't think I can add too much more other than that. I echo what you both said. I think I'm absolutely still learning, and I'm finding to be super open that my periods have got worse as I've got older, particularly from a hormonal mood point of view. So learning those triggers and understanding and being kind on myself, but also being back to the kind of vulnerability piece, like really open and honest with people that I feel in a position to do so. And actually, I'm really lucky. I work with some really brilliant people that I can have those really honest conversations. Say, look, you're not going to get the best from me today because I'm not feeling 100%. And then that comes back, and it just creates that safe environment where people feel like they can share.
Yeah.
And it's about people, the people that you're working with, you getting to know them on a personal level. like that is just so key and so important if you can do that.
Yeah. And then that creating that virtuous circle that they are then empowered to, or through all those concentric circles. Yeah. What role do you see flexibility playing in terms of supporting women's health needs? Obviously, there are, that looks slightly different across different roles, across different companies. How does that play out in your different companies?
I mean, I think it's absolutely key. We've got something called OVO and Flexibility. So I think around 50% of our employees are home-based, and the other 50% are assigned to one of our 3 hubs, so London, Bristol, or Glasgow. We haven't gone down the road of mandating 3 days a week in the office. The kind of suggested guidance, so we are softer in terms of our wording, is to come into one of your local hubs once a week to connect with your team. So I think the OVO way of flexibility for us is key in terms of supporting our people when they're going through any kind of health challenge, and that there isn't that monitoring of who's in offices and not in offices. There's no consequences. We want people to come in and feel like they can connect with people, but it's not a written rule, and people aren't going to get in trouble if they're not feeling like they can come in for a week or 2 weeks.
I honestly think this is quite a hard question to answer, perhaps with most people on the call and in the webinar. Working obviously for a tech company, working remotely, this is the space that I work in. We do have client visits, for example. Lots of our team are client facing. So I would say that flexibility and communication goes hand in hand. There are obviously going to be those job roles out there that are on site all the time, whether it's hospitality, retail, or any other types of environment that requires on-site. And by on-site, I mean in like the setting of where you need to be face-to-face with your customers, for example. We take the approach of being remote first, but obviously have certain roles that are client-facing. Anyone who is client-facing but has planned to go visit a client but can't for health reasons, I genuinely hope feels that they can say, and then someone else will go, or it will be held remotely. But for us, the majority of work obviously can be done remotely, and there is no need to force anyone to share a space to do the work that they could more comfortably do from home. But I do appreciate that not all environments and all roles are like that. Obviously, there are so many roles out there that require in-person needs. And I think that's harder for those employers to provide the flexibility that is needed to support women's health and other physical health, all physical health and mental health conditions that people have. But obviously in the world of where you're working sometimes remotely, obviously most of the time you can do that. I would expect or hope most employers can apply even more flexibility to their existing policies in times of need. So if you do have a once a week attendance, if somebody can't travel that 1 week because of their cycle, for example, not pressuring them to do so is hugely important. So not just flexibility in your policy, but flexibility in how you apply that policy or how rigid that policy is so important.
And that comes down again to, I keep saying it, but people knowing their people. And if someone comes to you and says, look, I can't come in today, then that's okay. And being able to have that really open and honest conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely, completely agree. I think communication is the biggest thing. Like we do have kind of flexible working within our company, but we have a multitude of roles that kind of they do require to be on site a little bit more. For example, if you're a welder, then it's obviously not a role you could potentially do at home. So it's kind of having that communication with your team, with your line managers, to kind of be open and honest, but also the line managers having that understanding around the flexibility and kind of the impacts that they have, the policies that we have internally as well around kind of special leave, working adjustment passports, etc. And yeah, I do think kind of having that flexibility, it's kind of invaluable when you do go through any kind of women's health conditions, fertility as an example, because it's, I've had friends of mine who have worked on site full time that have gone through fertility treatment or investigations for women's health, and they've said it's just been so stressful trying to kind of, because you don't necessarily want to have the conversation sometimes, especially fertility treatments. It's like, I'm not ready to talk to somebody about that yet. And it's a little bit more kind of, you've got to try and think around how to do that. I mean, I was very lucky that, again, I was remote, so I could kind of, I guess, hide it a little bit more. But when you're there all the time, it is a little bit more difficult. So I think employers having that understanding around flexibility, again, not just women's health, any kind of health issues, whether it's mental, physical, anything like that, to kind of be there. Because at the end of the day, we are all just human. We're not going to be able to go all day, every day, all the time, and always bring our best self to work, because that's just not possible. It's just not going to happen. So, just remembering everybody is a human being, and we all have different things happening in our lives, happening with our bodies, and having that, open and honest conversation.
Yeah, for the employers that the on-site roles are far, that challenge is really big for where there is a higher need for an on-site requirement. And I just think they have to think outside the box, and it's people and talent teams internally that have to champion those ideas. If remote working isn't possible, you could have adjustment of hours, for example. You could implement a policy, if you can afford to do so, where time off for fertility treatments is not deducted and things like that. I mean, I'm reading off a couple here that may or may not be practical for these employers, but I think offering flexibility where you have the ability to work remotely is so much easier than in situations where not all roles can be done remotely.
Yeah. And maybe that links back
to ones can. I think that's sometimes where it falls down. There's the requirement to be on site when actually you're doing the same thing that you were doing at home.
Yeah. And where it is not possible, it maybe links back to those practical ideas that you've been sharing around, the network groups, the real open, honest conversations with managers, the champions, the accreditations within the workplace that can make a real impact. Are there any mistakes or suboptimal things that you have seen in previous experience when in terms of kind of looking to support women's health initiatives, or any advice you'd give on kind of things to watch out, things to steer clear of? Leanne?
Happy to go for this one. I think the main answer I would give here is token policies and one-size-fits-all approaches. Obviously, there's probably a range of things. For example, limited views, only approaching one type of women's health thing. But I do think that token policies where in practice it's not there, or it's not seen, or people don't know it's there. I mentioned, I think before, that we're less policy based and more in practice. That doesn't mean it doesn't there, and it doesn't mean it's discretionary. It just means we're striving to make health a part of an everyday conversation, so that someone doesn't have to say, but I'm covered by this policy. We don't want anyone to have to say that, because that's a defensive position to be in. We want them to know it's there and they're entitled to things and there's a safe space to speak, but we're striving to make sure they don't have to fall back to put a policy in front of a line leader. That line leader should know how to have and open those conversations. But I've seen a lot of companies have a suite of policies, but in practice, they don't live by them. They haven't necessarily made booking sick leave accessible or easy for women to select those reasons for being off, or feel that they can share with their line leader that's why they're off. And that's kind of what I mean about those token policies. If you have one, shout about it. If you have one, embed it into the everyday life for your team. And that goes hand in hand with the one size fits all. Again, why we don't have one policy or one standalone approach. Menopause affects every woman differently. Different menstrual associated medical conditions affect every woman differently. I know so many women with endometriosis or adenomyosis in my family and with my friends, and every one of us has a unique experience. So I think that sometimes when you write a policy, it can feel a bit more restrictive to the people reading it than you intend. I've genuinely never seen an employer intend it to be restrictive or intend it to be a token. It's more just that behavior that goes around it. So being aware of what your policies look like in practice, being aware of the support and the support groups and the way that you actually deliver on those policies and promises, and the flexibility and openness to change them, to build on them, to improve them. If you have women coming through your company that share a different, unique experience, build that into somewhere, build a hub of resources, build people's firsthand experiences and have them speaking about it. So as much as the question was around a challenge or something that's not done necessarily well, hopefully there's some solutions there that also show how to overcome it as well.
Yeah, we've made sure that all of our policies are certainly not token policies. I think over communicating them and using them as part of like wider campaigns to ensure that our people know that they're there, because they get lost on an intranet page, right? People don't necessarily think, oh, I'll just do a quick search on what our menopause policy is until they need to. And I think we've always used our belonging network groups to put policies through them and ensure that they are fit for purpose for our people. Like that's the purpose of these groups, to ensure that we're hearing from the whole organisation, not just a HR people team.
I think it's really... Sorry, go for it, Lisa.
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, I think it's that kind of communication piece as well, isn't it? It's making it accessible to everybody. When I speak to kind of other women and friends and stuff that sort of go through it, they're like, I don't know what I can get through work. I don't know what the support is. I don't know where I stand with it. I don't know what the policy is. And it's kind of how to kind of make that accessible for everybody, but also make it clear. Like sometimes people say, I don't actually really understand what it's saying. So make it accessible, make it clear, but also kind of making sure that line managers are aware of that as well and kind of understand it. Because if an employee isn't aware, then a line manager can kind of help them with that. And they may not know, exactly, the best way to support them themselves, because they might not have gone through it. They might not fully understand, but they can at least point them in the direction of, this is what this is kind of saying, this is what you have, this is the support that's in place, so that employee does feel supported. They do feel like they have the knowledge and they know kind of where they stand with it. So
I actually, sorry, Christine, I know you actually found out today, which is really awful, in preparation for today, that we had menopause and andropause e-learning module. I didn't know that it existed, and I think I took that away as something that we need to do better in terms of making sure, Lisa, to your point, that it is accessible. Yeah. It is, people know that it's in existence, because actually our digital learning team do a great job of putting together these brilliant e-learnings. They're really interesting, they're really informative. If I didn't know about it, that means that a lot of people don't know about it. So we within the people team need to do a better job of communicating that and over communicating, and not expecting people to know that these things exist.
I mean, I was seeing some things in the chat, and obviously it speaks to another potential challenge, which is that difference between desk-based and people who are on client sites. And I think that is probably one of the biggest challenges. I think it affects so many people. It's a really, really important point, because work can't just obviously support desk-based employees, and women's health has to be designed inclusively. I mean, lots of companies, like our own ones, have both desk-based and client-facing roles. I think most companies do have that. And I think companies can create support that looks good centrally, but it doesn't translate necessarily operationally. And especially if those client-facing or site-based people feel that they're having a very different experience to their colleagues that are desk-based, that almost means a company has two different EVPs around, women's health, for example. So, it's not necessarily giving them the same workplace experience. I mean, I think there's lots of things that companies can probably do. They probably already are thinking of them, like greater flexibility with scheduling and protected well-being breaks and initiatives and things like that. But I think employees in that situation are probably having to ask for more than they're being given. And by default, desk-based workers are probably being given more from their companies, which puts those client-facing people in a position of having to ask.
I think there's something really fundamental there about the communication, isn't there? Of each business is going to look different. Each business is typically complicated, as you say. I think there's something quite inspiring about the idea that each person, whether that is someone who is going through something very difficult, or in a network of friends and family, or is a leader, or is a manager, or is an employee, that actually that openness and that curiosity and that starting those conversations can actually have a really significant impact, whatever level somebody is at in whatever size of organization. In terms of, I'm conscious of time, we'll head towards wrapping up. I'd love to look at a couple of questions from the audience here, but just wondered if we could end with, if there's one bit of advice you were going to give to an employer who genuinely wants to support women's health, or men who could better support female colleagues, what would that piece of advice be? Leanne?
My one piece of advice is listen before designing. Ask the women that work with you what support actually helps, rather than assuming. I see lots of policies written by ChatGPT, or lots of policies that are quite outdated, and actually asking before designing those policies and adapting them as you go through. I think I saw a comment before from someone who's a really small company, like 12 people. I think in that kind of environment, you may not have that many women to ask, so those people can lean into the women in their lives. It doesn't always have to necessarily be women from the workplace, but obviously in a bigger company, you have a pool of women who have gone through all sorts of women's health matters, whether it's fertility, whether it's menstrual related medical conditions, menopause. Ask them. Is create that safe space to ask them. I think a lot of employers are scared of asking their employees. They don't necessarily want that feedback, negative feedback in the moment, or they don't want that to create a difficult thing. But actually, we know that silence causes more of a rift and more concerns. So yeah, listen before designing, I would say.
That's so helpful. Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I think as well, it's kind of maybe not seen it as a tick box exercise. So, well, we need to have this because we might have women in the company, or because everybody else is doing it, but actually just be really open-minded and willing to kind of learn what is needed for the women within your company, and also men who want to advocate and be allies and support as well, so that entire community. So women's health, it's not just a women's sort of topic, it is kind of, men obviously want to be able to support. Every man has a woman in his life, whether it's his mother, his sister, his wife, his partner, a colleague. It kind of covers everybody, really. So just be kind of really open-minded on that. Listen, as you said, Leanne, I think that's the biggest thing, like listening to those that it needs to work for the most. That's absolutely kind of completely and utterly key. And yeah, I think even if it's just small steps to help change the culture, and small steps are better than no steps at all.
100%.
I'd echo all of that. I think I've said it a few times, but just over communicating, making sure that it's as accessible as possible, and also not being afraid to admit if you get it wrong. I think that vulnerability and that acceptance that we don't get everything right is actually a really powerful thing as well.
Yeah. As with so much in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. We all need to do more of that.
Yes. We're all human. It happens.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experience. And thank you so much as well to the audience for sharing some of your experience in the chat as well. Really appreciate that. What a honest and practical discussion. Thank you so much. The kind that we need lots more of. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for the panel for joining us. If anyone wants to find out more about BAE Systems, OVO, Patchwork, or any of the other companies who are offering women's health support, you can do that on flexa.careers. I hope that everyone is leaving with something practical that you can take away, if it's a shift in perspective, if it is just starting those difficult conversations, or just the reassurance that there are plenty of other people out there who are navigating really challenging things as well. We will be writing up the themes of today into a blog, so we will share that as well. And so thank you all very much for joining us.